Seventh grade science crew. Seventh grade science crew.
All right, guys, as you can see, I am smack dab inside of the water cycle. So our water cycle is going to have three main stages, but there's also some major parts that we're going to talk about that are involved in the water cycle. So as you can see right here behind me, I've got some red arrows pointing up. That's going to be for our first step of the water cycle, which is evaporation. Anytime water seems to dry up, it's being evaporated. So that means it's changing from its liquid state to its gas state. And when it changes from the liquid to a gas, it moves upwards towards the clouds. Once it hits our cloud, we have this fancy thing that happens next, and this is called condensation. So condensation creates clouds. So our sun heats up the water, it evaporates, it turns from a liquid to a gas. It goes up into the sky, and the further up you go, the colder the temperature gets in the sky. So we have our nice hot water vapor moving up into the sky, and it gets cooled very quickly. And when it gets cooled, those water molecules condense. They come together. So the word condensation means our molecules are coming together. And what that forms is a nice, beautiful cloud. So during condensation, our water turns from water vapor starts coming into a solid. And that brings us to our last step of the water cycle, which is precipitation. This is the one you guys should know so well, because precipitation is rain, hail, sleet, or snow. So anytime you have something coming from those clouds, any type of weather, we're going to call that precipitation. So our precipitation comes down, and that continues to go in what we call the water cycle. Our precipitation comes down as water, or it turns into liquid water, and that water heats up during evaporation, goes back up into the sky, condenses during condensation and becomes a big, beautiful cloud, and then rains, hails, sleets, or snow back down to the earth as precipitation. But there's two major things that I want you guys to understand that are very much a part of the water cycle. If you see that little tiny arrow right there, we have something called runoff. Runoff happens when you have a lot of rain, a lot of hail, a lot of sleet, or a lot of snow, and the ground has absorbed all of the water it can absorb. That extra water is called runoff. A lot of times during storms in the city, you might see water flowing into storm drains. That's what we call runoff. If you're out in the woods and it rains and you see like a little creek starting to have its water rise and maybe little trails of water going into that creek, that we are calling runoff. So runoff is that extra water that does not get absorbed by the earth. All right, and the second thing I want to add into our water cycle is called transpiration. Transpiration is kind of like when a plant sweats. So when a plant has absorbed as much water as it can, it lets off water. So kind of like when you and I go outside and run a mile and we start to sweat, plants kind of sweat too, but we call that transpiration. So plants let water off on its leaves, and that evaporates up into the sky and becomes a part of the water cycle as well. So let's review. We have evaporation, condensation, precipitation. After precipitation, we get runoff of water that's extra water that either goes into lakes or streams or in our storm drains. And then we have transpiration, which is like our plant sweat, right? Where water comes out of the leaves and plants and gets re-evaporated back into that water cycle. That's all I've got for today.
Breaking news, y'all! It is precipitating out here with rain and hail, and there's 2 of the 4, but we're missing the sleet and the snow. But come on, I want to be out in the sun, y'all! Out in the sun!
What does a cloud wear under their clothes? Sometimes I just get so hot and sweaty, water just drips right on the side. I call that condensation. You can see the transpiration on my leaves. It's that moisture that just comes out because I've already drank enough water. So look at the edges of my leaves and what you'll see is transpiration. That's the water that comes out of my leaves. Working in sewage is not a fun job, but it's gotta be done. When the storm waters come in and there's just too much runoff, the water flows in my drains and I store it and put it in a better place where it won't bother you humans.
7th grade science crew. Seventh grade science crew.